Welcome to our webinar on Rural Prosperity Links to Conservation Agriculture, brought to you by CFAIR, the Council on Food, Agricultural, and Resource Economics. My name is Jane Kolodinsky, and I'm the CFAIR Program Chair. It's my pleasure to be moderating today's webinar. It's CFAIR's mission to translate high-level research and knowledge to a diverse audience that includes policymakers, elected officials, and federal administrators. When we demonstrate the value of the profession to these groups, the Council increases public appreciation for research, extension, outreach, and academic programs in agricultural and applied economics. Before we get started, I'd like to provide some background on today's topic. I am pleased to present the December webinar findings from 3 funded projects related to conservation agriculture and crop diversity in larger agricultural systems. Protecting natural resources while improving farm profitability are 2 major goals of USDA. Across the value chain, ripple effects from research and outreach investments can increase crop yields, improve soil health, increase farmer incomes, meet evolving consumer demand, and inform national farm policy. I'd like to welcome our panelists as they discuss conservation agricultural impacts on a national level in the Midwest Corn Belt and in the Pacific Northwest. CFAIR has assembled a panel of experts to discuss their work. We'll start off today with Wei Zhang. Wei is an assistant professor in the Department of Agricultural and Applied Economics at Virginia Tech. Her research examines the environmental implications of agricultural production, the economics of agri-environmental policy, and the resilience of food and agricultural systems. Ongoing projects include the economic benefits of the USDA Environmental Quality Incentives Program, climate change, and agricultural productivity growth, including on-farm loss and waste of vegetables in the United States. Her work has been published in outlets including the American Journal of Agricultural Economics, Journal of Environmental Economics and Management, Journal of Environmental Economics and Management, Southern Economics Journal, and PNAS. She serves as an associate editor for the Australian Journal of Agricultural and Resource Economics. Ryan Boylan is the Research and Monitoring Program Manager at the Palouse Conservation District in Pullman, Washington. He has spent the last decade designing and implementing studies that quantify the effects of conservation practices on water quality, soil health, and fish and wildlife habitat in the Pacific Northwest. Before working for the district, Ryan completed his MS degree in Water Resources Sciences and Management at the University of Idaho, and received a BS in Environmental Sciences from the University of Vermont. Oh, we still need to introduce Linda. Dr. Linda Prokoby is Dean of the College of Agriculture and Life Sciences at the University of Vermont. She's an interdisciplinary social scientist who is recognized nationally and internationally for her work incorporating social science into the fields of agricultural conservation, agricultural adaptation to climate change, and watershed management. Dr. Prokoby has published over 150 peer-reviewed articles in consistently higher-tier journals. She's generated over $33 million in competitive research funds, and she graduated and mentored numerous graduate students and postdocs. Dr. Prokoby is the project director of the Diverse Corn Belt Project. Before I hand things over to our panelists, I'd like to remind you that you can submit questions for the speakers in the chat box at any time. We'll hold a Q&A session at the end of the presentations where our panelists can answer your questions. Now I'll hand over the webinar to Wei, who will start us off.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you for having me today. Today I'll focus on the economic benefits of agricultural conservation using studies from my research under the Environmental Quality Incentives Program, or EQIP. Next slide. So conservation on working agricultural land plays an important role for food security and the provision of ecosystem services, such as clean water. Over the past few decades, we have seen an increasing in public funding for conservation on working agricultural land, such as through EQIP. So it's natural to ask, what do we get from these investments? Do we see real improvement in environmental issues? And what's the social economic benefits of this, right? So in this presentation today, I will focus on the impact of EQIP on water quality and housing value and the crop yields. Next slide. So just a bit of background on EQIP. EQIP was established by the 1996 Farm Bill. It's administered by the NRCS of the USDA. EQIP supports a wide range of environmental priorities, including air quality, water quality, improvement, water conservation, soil health, wildlife habitat, etc. Next slide. EQIP provides financial and technical assistance to farmers and ranchers. To give you a sense of the scale, EQIP NRCS obligated over $10 billion during the 2005 to 2015 period through EQIP. That's my study period. And in recent years, it has been about $2 billion per year, right? So I obtained from NRCS a set of administrative data at the individual contract level. And I have the practice names and the payment. Of course, I don't have the farm or farmer information for confidentiality, right? So during my study period, we have over 200 conservation practices implemented. Next slide. So here is just a quick map to show the average annual EQIP payments during my study period across the country. There is no surprise. You can see where we have agriculture, we have EQIP payments. Next. So a little bit about my research methodology. I take a program evaluation perspective. So I focus on the overall impact of EQIP dollars and not individual conservation practice. The advantage of this is it allows me to not to take into consideration the interactions across practices, right? So my focus is the overall impact. But there is a challenge. It's hard for me to discuss the specific mechanism, which practice is the most beneficial, for example, right? So next slide. So our study of EQIP on water quality was published a couple of years ago. So we connect EQIP data with water quality monitoring station data, and we have some evidence EQIP payments improved some important water quality measures, in particular nitrogen and oxygen in the water. Next slide. So because now we have some evidence of EQIP's environmental benefits, it's natural to ask what's the economic benefits, just the monetary value of it, right? So in a follow-up study, we use a hedonic approach to estimate residents' value of EQIP conservation in the housing market. We merge the EQIP data with housing transaction data. So I wanted to note that our estimate from the housing market only represents a lower bound of the overall and economic benefits of agricultural conservation. Many of the ecosystem services are not capitalized in the housing price. Next slide. So this research is also at the end, it's under a second round of R&R at this journal JERI, right? We show that in this paper, the economic benefits are mainly capitalized in houses within 20 miles of EQIP projects. Next slide. To be more specific, we see a small but meaningful increase in the average housing prices. And if we take into consideration all the houses that are affected by EQIP in these census tracts, our estimate indicates that a 10% increase in equipment is associated with aggregate housing value increase about $1.6 billion. We also have some evidence the amenities valued by households are mainly from soil and water quality improvement practices. Next slide. So using our estimates, we calculated some benefit cost ratios. You see a lot of numbers here. These are just under different assumptions. We first calculate the benefit cost considering just the financial payments through EQIP. Then we add the technical assistance cost, and then we also take into consideration the private cost for implementing these practices. So you look at the highlighted part, that's including all costs. So what we are seeing here is for $1 conservation, we see about $3 to $7 increase in the housing value. Next slide. Next slide. Right. So in addition, we also examine the impact of EQIP on crop yields. And here we look at the more aggregated county level data. In addition to EQIP, we also take into consideration the investment under CRP for this analysis. Right. So we show that a 10% increase in equipment payments is associated with a small modest increase in corn yield. And if we look at a longer time period, like 5 years, the gains are larger, right? So more importantly, we don't have any evidence EQIP or CRP hurts the yield of these major crops, corn, soybeans, and wheat. Next. So a quick conclusion, we have evidence that EQIP improves the nitrogen and the oxygen levels in rivers, and we show that some practices in some regions may increase sediment, so a more targeted conservation strategy may be more important. And we also show that EQIP has a positive impact on housing prices, benefiting overall rural economies. And we show that EQIP increases corn yields modestly and does not reduce yields for any major crops. We have some evidence environmental and agricultural productivity goals can align. Next slide. So my research over the years have been supported by various major USDA, NIFA, and NRCS grants. I want to say that thank you very much. I really appreciate. Next slide. So any questions and comments are very much welcome. Also feel free to email me directly. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Wei. You really did show the linkages among investments in conservation agriculture and rural community economic development, as well as farm yields. Just fascinating. So audience, please don't forget to put your questions into the drop-down box that you can find on the right-hand side of your screen. Next, we're going to be hearing from Linda. Welcome, Linda.
Thanks, Jane. And hello, everyone. So as you can see here in my bio, I am currently at the University of Vermont, but I am talking about the Midwest, where I was for 22 years at Purdue University until I relocated to Vermont in July. This project I'm talking about today, the Diverse Corn Belt Project, is an idea that I actually hatched with, I feel like I need to justify myself with a group of ag economists. So Ben Gramig, my dear colleague, ag economist who's now at ERS, he and I hatched the idea for the Diverse Corn Belt Project about 7 years ago, based on the premise that most of my research up until that point in time had been what motivates farmers to adopt conservation practices, participate in programs like EQIP that Wei just talked about so nicely, and the increasing recognition that even if every single corn and soybean farm in the Midwest adopted conservation practices, we still wouldn't solve all of our problems, our environmental problems, our social problems, our economic problems, and certainly would not have rural resilience and prosperity. So we hatched this idea that maybe the pathway towards a more truly sustainable Midwest would be diversification. So if we can go to the next slide, we pulled together a large team of folks from a number of different universities and a number of nonprofits and different government agencies. This project's funded, this will be my final slide, but it's a USDA NIFA Sustainable Ag Systems grant, a 5-year project, $10 million. We have just started our 5th year. Next slide, please. There we go. So the basic, gosh, this did not format very well at all. Okay, anyway, the goal of the project was to generate visions and frameworks to inform shifts to a more diversified agriculture in the Midwest. We never thought that in 5 years we would miraculously create a diverse Midwest, but we wanted to change the conversation. So our goal has been to identify and address barriers to diversification and then outline pathways to systems that we believe are more resilient and economically, environmentally, and socially sustainable. And we're focused on the 3 I states, Illinois, Indiana, and Iowa, the 3 I states in the middle of the country, I should say. So at the farm level, when we talk about diversification, we're thinking about 5 different things in the Midwest. We're thinking about incorporating horticultural food crops, extending rotations, so adding a 3rd crop beyond corn and soybeans to replace a corn and soybeans rotation, perennial crops, agroforestry, and grazing livestock. We recognize that to do that, we need to diversify markets, and we want to make sure that those markets are serving a diversity of different types of consumers, and recognizing that at the landscape level, what that diversification pattern looks like will still certainly include and should include corn and soybeans, but we'd start to see more landscape differentiation. Next slide, please. And there we go. All right, so our strategy, we have a series of different objectives that you can see outlined here and the linkages of how they all tie together. The one I'm going to talk about today is our first objective. So this is our heavy social science objective, and I'm a social scientist. And I think this work is foundational to the work that we're doing in this Diverse Corn Belt project. So basically, co-production is an academic way of saying we want to work with key stakeholder partners to come up with great ideas. As you can see on this slide, we're also doing a lot. We're doing in-field work, we're doing modeling. We have ag economists embedded throughout a number of these different teams. We have an extension objective, we have an education objective, all the things you'd expect to see in one of these large integrated grants. The next slide, thank you, I think shows the different ways in which we're engaging with different people. So we started out our first year doing a series of focus groups with Corn Belt farmers, ones who are diversified already or are diversifying, and ones who have not diversified. Some of the early results from that have been published, which you can't see that tiny little image there, but that has been published, and I can certainly share that link with anyone who's interested. We also did a survey of corn farmers across the Midwest, and those results have also been preliminary results from that have been published. We're doing some additional work, of course, with that data. We've also done interviews with diversified Corn Belt farmers to understand how they transitioned and what drove them to, and we're working on publishing that work now. And then we've done what we think is sort of the heart of this project, what we call RAD teams, Reimagining Agricultural Diversity. We've formed these teams in every state. We've met with them numerous times and worked with them over time to talk about what their visions are for a more diversified agricultural landscape and how do we get to more diversification. Those teams have included farmers, farm advisors, government agency representatives, local community economic development people, all kinds of different folks who have a stake in what the future of the Midwest Corn Belt should look like. And so we wrapped that process up a couple of months ago in Illinois and invited folks from all 3 states to get together, and we finalized policy recommendations out of that process, and we're working with CAST to publish those policy recommendations now, and those should be coming out early next year. Next slide, please. So I'm just going to share some highlights of some of our findings here. We asked folks, does diversification make sense? The answer is yes, but yes, it improves resilience, economic health, water quality, rural community vitality. It's great for marginal lands. There's lots of potential for value-added products, potential for outdoor recreation and agritourism. We can more fully utilize the growing season, but it's complicated. There will always be corn and soybean production in the Midwest. We need to add to and not replace the existing system, and obviously it needs to be economically viable. Next slide, please. Let's see, some of the findings from our survey. One of the questions we asked, and this is, I think, one of the most fascinating questions that we asked, was which production system is best equipped to achieve the following goals over the next 20 years? You can see in this first green box things that farmers thought highly diversified or somewhat diversified systems were better at. So appealing to processors, retailers, consumers, conservation, increasing resilience, managing weeds, pests, and disease, and managing yield in a changing climate. Several things that sort of fell in the middle that neither system was better at. And the one I find most interesting is that farmers, even diversified farmers, think that the best way to feed an increasing population is with highly specialized and somewhat specialized systems. And we've talked about this result with farmers because I personally find it quite ironic, because the corn and soybeans, for the most part, grown in the Midwest, are actually not feeding people. And that disconnect, that really, really strong sense of purpose that farmers have, that they are feeding the world when actually they're not, and it distorts the choices that people make, quite frankly, throughout the country, I think. All right, next slide. And we can talk more about that later if you would all like. But generally, 42% of the farmers that we surveyed agree, in the future, I would like to see more types of crops, trees, and or grazed livestock produced in my community. So we, of course, find that to be a very positive finding from our survey, that we were pleased to see that there is certainly interest from farmers in diversification. Next slide, please. We did what we call Q-sort methodology with farmers and had them rank different statements. And we categorized two different types of people who are coming to our RAD team meetings. Ones who are primarily interested in community scaled benefits that a more diversified system can bring to a region, and ones who are more interested in an increased investment in soil health and input use efficiency. Those two groups are not necessarily mutually exclusive, but there's still, sort of as we're talking to groups of people about diversification, sort of suggest some pathways that might respond, some folks might respond better to than others. Next slide. So this one's still animated. Okay, we also did some visioning. What do people want to see in the future? We co-produced some policy opportunities. If you could just click the next slide. There we go. Just keep clicking 3 more times. Sorry, I thought I took animation out of this slide. We focused on 4 main policy opportunities. 1 more click, please. We focused on 4 main policy opportunities that but developed organically out of these RAD teams. So reforming crop insurance and commodity support programs, enhancing conservation incentive programs to encourage diversification, developing post-harvest and processing infrastructure, and expanding institutional purchasing initiative. Each of those different ideas, which really bubbled up from our people at our last meeting, the joint meeting we held in Illinois with all 3 states, we dove deep into those 4 opportunities and came up with more specifics that will be in the CAST report that will be forthcoming next year. Next slide, please. So some key takeaways: there's an appetite for diversification, but of course it has to be profitable and has to fit into existing systems. We need to promote awareness of the benefits and challenges of diverse crops and markets, and a coordinated strategy is needed to encourage diversification. And a large part of that strategy has to be policy change. Policies very much support the current landscape that we see in the Midwest, and there need to be some tweaks to that if we would like farmers to be able to make changes in ways that are beneficial for their families, both socially and economically. Next slide, please. And that's it. So thank you. I'm happy to take any questions during the Q&A time, and feel free to visit our website and learn more. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. Our final panelist is Ryan, and we're moving across the country into the Pacific Northwest. Welcome, Ryan.
Thanks, Jane. Yeah, thank you all for having me today. I'm really excited to talk about a project that we've been working on for the last 4 years called Farmers Leading Our United Revolution in Soil Health. This was funded through a USDA Conservation Innovation On-Farm Trials grant. It was a $2.1 million grant that we've been working on for the last couple of years. And most of the work, all the work is focused in the dryland agricultural region in the Pacific, inland Pacific Northwest. Next slide, please. Yeah, and so the Flourish, which is Farmers Leading Our United Revolution Soil Health Project, is mainly focused on cover crops. And this is just for some context. It may not be necessary, but I think it's good to do. Cover crops are typically grown not to be harvested, but to improve either soil quality or provide fertility for the crop that would follow the cover crop. Cover crops are been more widely adopted in the Midwest, but farmers in our region have been having a really hard time figuring out how to fit them into the crop rotations given the lack of summer precipitation that we have here. Next slide. And cover crops are nothing new. This is a farmer's bulletin from 1924, so 100 years ago, where they're discussing cover crops. And actually in our region, prior to the Green Revolution, cover crop, specifically sweet clover, was used as the sole fertility for winter wheat, which is one of the primary crops that's grown in our region. Next slide, please. And so with some of this information, what motivated us to apply for this Conservation Innovation Grant was that we found that so many people were experimenting with diversifying crop rotations and trying to fit cover crops in, but they weren't quite figuring it out and they weren't all connected. And we wanted to figure out a way to help offset the risk of trying these new systems in our area. We also wanted to give them the opportunity to experiment on their farm and then set up these communities of learning between the farmers. And then also just there's so many farm influencers, like big names in farming that have been very successful. And they're typically in other places, but they haven't been adopted to our region. So the innovators in our area are now able to take the next step with some of this funding that's been provided to them. Next slide, please. But the real motivation was this guy. His name's Jason Bishop, and he's a farmer in a small town called Edwall, Washington. And this idea, Farmers Leading United Revolution Soil Health, the acronym all came from him. He applied for a Conservation Innovation Grant on his own in 2019, and I think it didn't get funded because they were like, oh, this is way too small, like it needs to be bigger. And then he came to his local conservation district, they came to us, we all partnered together and ended up writing this bigger grant. And his whole idea was to like build soil microbiology, reduce synthetic inputs on his farm. He really wants to improve soil for the future generations, as well as improving livelihood in his rural community. So Jason is the one that really is driving this. Next slide, please. And so yeah, the overall goal for the Flourish project is to demonstrate farming practices that build soil health and increase resilience of our dryland cropping systems. We're doing this by supporting the adoption of soil health management systems and by creating farmer-led groups that demonstrate that cover crops and livestock cover crop integrated systems at a regional scale. And we have 3 main objectives. One was to set up these trials on 27 farms in Idaho, Washington, and Oregon on a 30-acre plot. And then we would evaluate the soil health properties, economic cost benefits, and social impacts. And then just also encourage practice adoption, not just among the 27 farmers that are participating, but the wider farming community through these peer-to-peer educational opportunities. Next slide, please. And the next few slides are just kind of what the trials look like. So the farmers essentially had 4 options when they decided to sign on. They could plant cover crops in place of fallow. This is sometimes called green fallow. And fallow is fields that are left nothing seeded in the year, typically in our region, to build up soil moisture so that the next year it can grow a crop. Next slide, please. The other one was interseeded cover crops and cash crops. So there you can see sunflowers interseeded with triticale and canola. Next slide, please. And then they have the option to integrate livestock into both these systems. Next slide. And so here you can kind of see the breakdown of where all these farms are. That might be a little bit hard to see, but you're seeing parts of Idaho, Washington, and Oregon there. The majority of the farms are in Washington, but we do have 4 in Idaho and 2 in Oregon. And over the years, more and more of the participating farmers have been adopting these like green fallow livestock integrated systems, and the interseeded cash crop has been way harder to figure out, especially integrating livestock back in. Integrating livestock back into farms here has been a challenge because many years ago, all the fences and watering systems were pulled out. So it takes a big capital investment for a lot of these farmers to get back into that. Next slide, please. And this is just kind of what a trial would look like on the ground. It's a paired plot design. So we have a 30-acre cover crop field right next to a 30-acre business as usual field, which is typically like a winter wheat or spring grain that's being grown. We're taking soil samples in both of these plots, as well as collecting all the economic data for both these plots. Next slide, please. And yeah, just a brief overview of what data is being collected. We're collecting soil, chemical, physical, and biological parameters in each of the cover crop and their business as usual fields, and tracking this every single year. And then we're tracking the economic data associated with the trials and their business as usual plots. And we've been collecting that at the end of each growing season. At the end of the project, we'll have a comprehensive report of what that looks like. And then we're doing a social assessment of the participating farmers as well as the wider agricultural community in our region. We did an initial assessment or survey of the participants in year 1. We'll do another one this year, actually, starting December. And then we have some ongoing wider surveys of the agricultural community. Next slide, please. And then we also have these peer-to-peer learning and outreach activities. This has been really awesome and one of the best parts of the project, just watching these farmers form as a cohesive group and learn from each other. So we have annual field tours, 1 to 2 each year. We have an end of the growing season meeting where we share the data that we've been collected and the farmers present on their trials. So it's a good way for them to learn. We have an annual cropping symposium where the public's invited in and they listen to a bunch of the farmers talk about what they've done. And then we also have podcasts and videos that are available on all the platforms in our website. Next slide. And so the key takeaways so far, for the first 3 years of the trials, we've seen significant improvements in soil health indicators, specifically those that are more sensitive to changes in management. So we've seen increases in soil organic matter, active carbon, soil respiration in just cover crop fields. And there's more positive effects when you integrate livestock into those cover crop fields. And then this is a really interesting finding for us that we're seeing soil pH increase consistently in fields that have cover crops and livestock integrated. In our area, pH has been declining for a long time, which can cause a lot of issues for growing crops. And then just some of the social outcomes that we've been seeing, and this is a thing that a lot of the farmers say that have been participating, it's just bringing life back to the farm. One, like life in like wildlife habitat. So when you walk up these cover crop fields, it's buzzing with insects and there's birds flying around, and there's deer coming to their fields. A lot of these farmers are also reducing synthetic inputs, so it's fun for them to walk out in the fields with their kids, and like the kids are happy to help with a lot of the operations on the farm now. And then this was one of the comments that we had from that last bullet point. There is one of the comments we had from one of the participants, or a lot of the participants in our initial survey, was that there was limited agronomic information available about cover cropping, specifically in our region. And we're hoping that we're going to be able to answer a bunch of these questions with all the data that we've been collecting over the last 3 years. Next slide. Yeah, and that's all I have for you today. I'm happy to take questions during the Q&A. We do have a website there, inwflourish.org. There's also all sorts of stuff on social media. It's INWFlourish. Yeah, and again, I just want to thank USDA and the Conservation Innovation Grant Program for making this happen.